Before you decide this message isn't about you, let me ask you something. What if the love you've been consciously searching for as an adult was actually being quietly called forward by a much younger part of you, one who never stopped waiting for someone safe enough to finally arrive? What if every hour you've spent healing old wounds, sitting with difficult childhood memories, learning to comfort yourself the way you once needed to be comforted, has not simply been separate, private work, but has actually been sending out a signal, a kind of readiness, that shapes exactly who becomes available to step into your life? Most people think of inner child work as something purely personal, useful for individual healing but disconnected from the practical business of finding love. But there is a much deeper relationship between healing your earliest wounds and the quality of connection that becomes available to you, one grounded in real psychological understanding rather than simple wishful thinking. Right now, if you've been doing genuine inner child work, examining old patterns, offering yourself the compassion you may not have received early in life, learning to soothe fears that trace back decades, this work may be doing something significant beyond your own private healing. It may be actively reshaping who you're capable of recognizing, trusting, and receiving in your romantic life, sometimes in ways that become visible with surprising speed once genuine internal shift has taken hold. This is not magical thinking divorced from psychological reality. It reflects something well understood in attachment and developmental psychology, that the unhealed parts of us tend to unconsciously drive who we are drawn to and how we behave within relationships, while the healed, integrated parts of us create genuinely different conditions, both internally and in what we are able to perceive and receive externally. But before you assume this message is only about attracting someone new, there's something more important to understand. This isn't just a story about manifestation or attraction in the conventional sense. It's about the profound, well-documented connection between healing your inner child and becoming capable of recognizing, choosing, and sustaining genuinely healthy love, whether that love is someone entirely new or someone already present in your life who you're finally able to see and connect with clearly. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear may completely change the way you understand inner child work, romantic readiness, and the profound relationship between healing your earliest wounds and the love that becomes available to you as a result. Have you noticed that periods of genuine personal healing in your life have often coincided with significant shifts in your romantic circumstances, sometimes in ways that felt too well timed to be pure coincidence? The concept of the inner child describes the emotional patterns, beliefs, and unmet needs formed during your earliest years, patterns that continue existing within your adult psyche, often operating largely outside conscious awareness, but significantly shaping how you experience and navigate adult relationships. A child who experienced consistent emotional attunement from caregivers develops a felt sense that their needs matter, and that connection is generally safe and reliable. A child who experienced neglect, inconsistency, or emotional unavailability develops different underlying beliefs, that their needs are burdensome, that love is unpredictable, or that they must earn care through performance or vigilance rather than simply receiving it as a natural part of being valued. These early beliefs, formed before a person had significant conscious, verbal understanding of their experience, do not remain confined to childhood. They become the emotional lens through which adult relationships are interpreted and navigated, often producing patterns that feel confusing or frustrating precisely because their true origin remains unexamined and largely unconscious. Inner child work involves directly engaging with these early patterns, often through specific therapeutic techniques, guided visualization, dialogue with the younger self, or somatic practices that help access and process emotional material stored outside ordinary conscious memory. This work typically involves identifying the specific unmet needs or wounds from childhood, offering compassion and validation to the younger self who experienced them, and gradually developing new, corrective beliefs and emotional responses that can replace the old, limiting patterns formed in response to early experience. This work matters significantly for romantic relationships specifically because so many relational patterns, who you're drawn to, how you behave once closeness develops, what you tolerate or don't tolerate, trace directly back to these early, often unconscious beliefs about love, safety, and your own worthiness of care. Addressing these patterns at their root, rather than simply managing their symptoms within individual relationships, tends to produce far more significant and lasting change in your overall romantic life than attempting to address surface-level relationship difficulties without ever examining their deeper origin. Understanding the specific mechanisms through which inner child healing influences romantic attraction and connection offers meaningful insight into why this work often produces such significant shifts in a person's love life. One significant mechanism involves a fundamental shift in what feels familiar, and therefore attractive, at an unconscious level. Prior to healing, many people find themselves unconsciously drawn to partners who recreate familiar early dynamics, emotional unavailability, inconsistency, conditions that echo whatever specific wound remains unaddressed. This is not a conscious choice. It reflects the nervous system's tendency to associate familiarity with safety, even when that familiarity is genuinely painful. As inner child healing progresses, This underlying familiarity gradually shifts, meaning that the specific qualities that once felt intensely compelling, precisely because they recreated old wounds, begin to feel less appealing, while qualities reflecting genuine health and consistency begin to feel more attractive than they previously did. A second significant mechanism involves changes in behavior within developing relationships, rather than simply changes in initial attraction. Someone who has done meaningful inner child work often develops considerably improved capacity to communicate needs directly, tolerate appropriate vulnerability, and respond to conflict from a grounded, adult perspective rather than an activated, wounded one. These behavioral changes tend to create fundamentally different relational dynamics than the patterns that existed prior to this healing work, often allowing connections to develop and deepen in ways that previous, unhealed patterns would have made considerably more difficult. A third mechanism, less discussed but significant, involves changes in perception and discernment. Someone whose inner child wounds remain largely unaddressed often struggles to accurately perceive red flags or genuine incompatibility, sometimes because early experience taught them to normalize or overlook behaviors that reflect real relational problems. As healing progresses, many people report a significantly improved capacity to accurately perceive both red flags and genuine compatibility, allowing for considerably better discernment in who they choose to pursue or continue investing in romantically. Finally, there is the simple, practical effect of increased overall well-being and confidence that tends to accompany genuine inner child healing. People engaged in meaningful, ongoing healing work often report feeling generally more secure, more present, and more genuinely themselves, qualities that tend to be experienced as attractive by potential partners, not through any calculated strategy, but simply as a natural byproduct of increased internal well-being and authentic self-expression. There are specific, recognizable signs that indicate your inner child healing work is genuinely producing shifts in your romantic circumstances, signs worth paying attention to as evidence that this internal work is having real, external impact. One significant sign is a noticeable shift in the type of person you find yourself drawn to, or a change in how you respond to previously familiar dynamics. If you notice that people who once felt intensely compelling now feel less appealing, or conversely, that people you might have previously overlooked as too stable or too easy now feel genuinely attractive in a new way, this shift often indicates that your underlying patterns of attraction are actively transforming as a direct result of your healing work. Another meaningful sign involves changes in how you behave within a current or developing relationship, increased capacity to communicate needs directly rather than through indirect testing or withdrawal, improved ability to tolerate vulnerability without becoming overwhelmed, or a noticeably calmer response to situations that would have previously triggered significant anxiety or defensive reaction. These behavioral shifts often indicate that your inner child work has genuinely begun changing not just your internal experience, but your actual, observable relational patterns. Increased synchronicity or meaningful timing around romantic opportunities can also serve as a significant sign. Unexpected encounters, renewed interest from someone previously unavailable, or new opportunities arising that seem to align unusually well with the specific qualities you've been consciously working to develop through your healing process. While these experiences should be considered alongside, rather than as a replacement for, genuine behavioral and perceptual change, many people report a noticeable increase in this kind of meaningful timing specifically during periods of significant inner child healing work. A growing sense of genuine self-acceptance and reduced anxiety about your own worthiness of love is perhaps the most significant underlying sign of all, a shift from feeling that you must earn or prove your worthiness of connection toward a settled, internal knowing that you are inherently worthy of genuine, healthy love. This internal shift, more than any specific external circumstance, often represents the deepest, most significant marker that your inner child healing is genuinely progressing in ways that will continue supporting healthier romantic connection moving forward. Genuinely healing inner child wounds in ways that meaningfully influence your romantic life tends to require several specific, ongoing practices, rather than a single insight or brief period of reflection. Working directly with a therapist trained in inner child or attachment-focused approaches provides significant structured support for this process. Specific therapeutic modalities designed to access and process early emotional material, rather than purely cognitive or talk-based approaches alone, tend to produce more significant and lasting change, since much of this early material is stored in ways that respond better to experimental, somatic, or specifically targeted therapeutic techniques than to purely intellectual discussion alone. Regular practice of self-compassion, particularly directed toward your younger self during moments when old wounds become activated, supports this healing significantly as well. This might involve specific visualization practices, imagining comforting your younger self during a specific remembered difficult moment, or simply developing an ongoing internal practice of responding to your own emotional activation with genuine warmth and understanding rather than criticism or dismissal. Journaling specifically focused on identifying the origin of current relational patterns, tracing a specific present-day reaction or belief back to its likely early origin, helps build the kind of conscious awareness that supports genuine, lasting change, moving these patterns from unconscious, automatic reactions toward conscious, examine material that can be genuinely processed and gradually transformed. Practicing new, corrective behaviors directly within current relationships, communicating needs more directly, tolerating appropriate vulnerability rather than immediately retreating, responding to conflict from a grounded rather than activated place, provides essential real-world practice that reinforces the internal shifts being cultivated through more reflective or therapeutic work. Insight alone, without corresponding behavioral practice, tends to produce considerably less lasting change than insight combined with active, ongoing practice of new relational patterns. Building relationships and friendships with people who demonstrate secure, healthy relational patterns provides valuable corrective experience as well, offering ongoing evidence that contradicts old, wounded beliefs about how relationships generally function, gradually helping recalibrate your own expectations and internal templates for what healthy connection actually looks and feels like. It's worth being direct about something important regarding this entire process. Genuine inner child healing is not primarily a technique for forcing a specific desired person to appear in your life on a particular timeline, and approaching it purely with this narrow, transactional goal tends to undermine the deeper, more significant transformation this work is actually capable of producing. This healing work is fundamentally about your own internal transformation, becoming genuinely more whole, more secure, and more capable of healthy connection, benefits that remain significant and valuable regardless of whether they result in a specific romantic outcome within a particular time frame you might be hoping for. Approaching this work purely as a strategy to manifest a specific person, rather than as genuine healing work valuable in its own right, often subtly undermines the work itself, keeping your attention anxiously focused on external outcome rather than genuine internal transformation. When you approach inner child healing authentically, for your own genuine well-being and growth rather than purely as a manifestation technique, the romantic benefits that naturally emerge tend to be more stable, more aligned with genuine health, and more sustainable than benefits pursued purely through anxious, outcome-focused effort. This distinction matters considerably for understanding how to engage with this work in a way that genuinely supports both your healing and, as a natural, secondary benefit, your capacity for healthy romantic connection. It's worth remembering that the value of genuine inner child healing extends significantly beyond any specific romantic outcome, benefiting your relationship with yourself, your friendships, your family relationships, and your overall capacity for genuine well-being throughout every area of your life. Someone who has done meaningful inner child healing work tends to experience improved relationships across the board, not exclusively romantic ones, along with a generally improved capacity for self-compassion, emotional regulation, and authentic self-expression. These benefits remain genuinely valuable and significant even independent of whatever specific romantic circumstances ultimately unfold as a result of this deeper, internal work. This broader perspective matters because it protects you from the discouragement that can arise if romantic circumstances do not shift as quickly or as specifically as you might hope, despite genuine, meaningful healing work. The healing itself remains valuable, remains meaningful, and remains worth continuing, regardless of the specific timeline or exact form your eventual romantic life ultimately takes as a result of this ongoing internal work. If you've been doing genuine inner child healing work, sitting with difficult memories, offering yourself compassion you may not have received early in life, gradually building new, healthier patterns to replace old wounds, understand that this work matters profoundly, both for your own well-being and for the quality of love that becomes genuinely available to you as a result. The love story unfolding in your life may indeed be connected to this deeper healing in ways more significant than purely conscious, deliberate searching ever could achieve on its own. But this connection between healing and love is not magic disconnected from real psychological process. It reflects genuine, well-understood transformation, in what feels familiar, in how you behave within relationships, in what you're capable of perceiving and receiving, transformation that continues benefiting you regardless of the specific timeline or exact form your romantic life ultimately takes. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this message resonated with your own healing journey, I hope it offered meaningful validation for the depth and significance of the work you've been doing, and genuine hope about the love that this work continues making possible. This has been the Archetype Awakening. I hope this video helped you understand the profound connection between healing your earliest wounds and the love you're capable of receiving, and reminded you that your inner child's healing is never separate from your adult capacity for genuine, lasting connection. Wishing you continued compassion for your younger self, patience with your own healing process, and the deep, secure love that becomes possible once that younger part of you finally feels genuinely safe, seen, and whole. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.